This is The Guardian.
A warning before we begin. This episode contains distressing content with references to violence and sexual abuse. Please listen with care. I'm Bridie Jabour, coming to you from Gadigal land, and this is Who Cared? The disappearance of Amber Haigh.
Robert Jeeves and his wife Anne are on trial for the murder of Amber Haigh, who hasn't been seen since 2002.
The prosecutor has alleged Anne and her husband Robert Jeeves killed Amber Haigh to take custody of her child.
The defence refuting those claims, saying both accused must have foreseen such an act would result in the child being taken from their care in the faintest of suspicion.
Robert and Anne Geeves both stand accused of murdering Amber Haigh, who had a 5-month-old baby with Robert. They both plead not guilty. This week, the trial was punctuated by a string of separate incidents that the court heard happened to Amber, most notably in a country law firm as she tried to make a will, and further details of what's been called the tying up evidence.
The fourth week of this murder trial has focused on the last few months of Amber Haigh's life, her pregnancy and the few short months she had with her young son in early 2002. We heard testimony that while pregnant, Amber Haigh wanted to write a will because she was convinced she would die. That in her words, her life would be taken once she'd given birth.
Amber Haigh was 19 years old when she disappeared in 2002. The trial of her murder is now in its fourth week. It's Monday, the 15th of July.
It's Monday evening, and we've heard a pretty bruising, pretty confronting day of evidence. We heard today from a cousin, a second cousin of Amber Haigh, a woman by the name of Jackie Wynne. She's in a wheelchair and she sat with a blanket over her legs, and a number of times was seized by spasms which stopped her from speaking. The judge was alive to this and very considerate. A couple of times she told the court that she was sitting closer to Jackie Wynne in the witness box and she could see that she was getting physically distressed, very red in the face and in clear discomfort. And again today, we've returned to this, what's become known as the tying up evidence, the reported disclosures by Amber Haigh to people that Robert Jeeves would tie her up.
Ben, it's the fourth week of this trial. What did this week of evidence bring?
The first witness to talk about is a woman called Jackie Wynne. Jackie is Stella's daughter. She's also the mother of a man called Paul Harding. Paul Harding is Amber's cousin. And we've previously heard in court that Paul Harding and Amber Haigh had a sexual relationship and that Amber fell pregnant to Paul at the age of 14. That pregnancy was ultimately terminated, but it caused enormous ruptures within the family. Jackie and Amber are close, but their relationship is often very fractious, very scratchy. Episodically, it's violent between them. In 2001, Amber was living at her great auntie Stella's home in Kingsvale. This house is next door to the Jeeves' property. Amber has fallen pregnant to Robert Jeeves. She's carrying his son, but she hasn't moved into the Jeeves' home yet. Jackie doesn't live in the house, but she lives nearby and she's come to visit her mother's house. She goes to great auntie Stella's home and Amber tells her something. Amber holds up her arms to Jackie and shows her her wrists. And on both wrists are brown marks. And Amber says she's got the injuries from Robert tying her up. Jackie told the court, Amber showed me her wrists. I could see a mark on both. They weren't fresh. They were just like brownish marks around her wrist. Jackie says to Amber she should report this to the police. This shouldn't be happening.
And did the court hear if Amber did report it?
No. Jackie urged Amber to go to the police and report this, but she just told her she was scared. Jackie also testified that Haigh told her that Robert Jeeves would come to her bedroom window in the middle of the night to talk to her. Jackie says she said to Amber, "Don't talk to him." Jackie told the court that Amber rebuffed her advice not to see Robert Jeeves. Jackie says Amber told her, "It's my own life. I have to find out on my own terms." Amber later moved up the road to live with Robert and Anne Geeves, but she'd regularly come back to her great auntie Stella's house, usually to get something to eat. Jackie testified Amber told her she was not happy at the Jeeveses. She was wanting to leave.
So did Jackie give any evidence as to why she was giving Amber this advice, why she was telling her to stay away from Robert Jeeves?
She did, and most of this came in cross-examination that began on Monday and spilled over into Tuesday. She was being cross-examined by Anne Geeves' lawyer, Michael King. Jackie says she warned Amber against seeing Robert Jeeves because she was concerned about the age gap between the two. There was 22 years between the pair. And she says she was worried about Amber's safety because of Robert Jeeves' reputation. And this is where we come to a key element of the defence case, that Robert Jeeves had a history of alleged incidents that were well known throughout the small towns of Harden and Young and Kingsvale and Wombat. These were known by people and they were talked about a lot. And we've begun to hear in court now, 4 weeks into this trial, a clearer picture of exactly what those incidents were.
And what did Jackie say they were?
She told the court she'd heard of 2 previous alleged incidents at the Jeeves' property. The first involved 2 young girls. And this is what Jackie said. "I knew of incidents that happened years ago about the young girls. They were kidnapped and put in a silo and tied up." The second incident Jackie spoke about was about a woman referred to in court as Janelle. She said, "And Janelle, it was in the paper that she'd shot herself through the face." Jackie was asked if her knowledge of those incidents caused her to be worried about Robert Jeeves. She said yes. People would talk about it. And King, in his cross-examination, pressed Jackie on both of these, that it was because of her knowledge of these alleged incidents that she told Amber to stay away. "Did you tell Amber to stay away from Robert Jeeves because he kidnapped some girls and tied them up?" "Yes." "Did you tell Amber that she should stay away from Robert Jeeves because he'd been involved in a situation where a woman got shot?" "Yes."
Ben, you said earlier that Jackie's relationship with Amber was not entirely straightforward. I think you used the word fractious. What did she tell the court about that?
In court, Jackie conceded that her relationship with Amber was pretty rocky, was fractious often, and on at least 2 occasions became physical. In one, Jackie put her hands around Amber's upper shoulders and neck, sort of grabbing her by the scruff and roughing her up. In another one, there was an argument over a TV being played too loud, and there was some pushing and some shoving. And Amber Haigh ultimately went to police and took out an AVO against her cousin. But despite these incidents, Jackie says she cared deeply for Amber. Their relationship improved, and she was deeply concerned for her cousin's safety. Tuesday was a return to professional evidence, testimony from people who had contact with Amber Haigh in a professional, in a work environment. But that evidence was no less confronting. Rebecca Pisaturo-McMillan was a paralegal in a suburban law firm in the town of Young in 2001, when on the 8th of August, a pregnant Amber Haigh walked in the front door of the office. Rebecca told the court what happened next has scarred her memory.
And Ben, I want to talk about an incident involving Amber that the court heard a lot about this week. It involved the drafting of a will. What was the testimony around that?
On the 8th of August 2001, Amber Haigh was about 4 months pregnant, and she walked into a legal firm in the town of Young and she asked to draft a will. In the witness box this week, a former paralegal, Rebecca Pisaturo-McMillan, gave evidence that she spoke to Haigh when she walked into the solicitor's office that morning. In her evidence in chief, Rebecca told the court in detail about a conversation she says she had with Haigh in the law firm's offices. Rebecca said, "When Amber came in, I asked her how we could help her. During our conversation, she mentioned she was pregnant and requiring a will for the safeguard of her unborn child. She made a comment to me that she was going to die. My reaction was to be lighthearted and say, well, we're all going to die. You're making a will, obviously." But the conversation went on, and Rebecca told the court, and then she explained to me that she suffered epilepsy, to which I responded, "There are medications, there are things that can be done. We shouldn't expect to die from epilepsy." Rebecca's evidence continued like this. She said, "The conversation grew from there, and that's when she told me about her fears. She was very straightforward and adamant that once her child was born, her life would be taken. She told me who it would be taken by, not in name, but in her mind the equivalent, which was a description of who that person was." And Rebecca Pisaturo-McMillan was asked, who did she describe? She described that it would be the father of the child who had told her if she was ever pregnant that she would not live beyond the birth of that child, that he would end her life. She was quite convinced that this would happen. It wasn't if or but or a maybe.
So what did Rebecca say happened? Did they make the will?
So after this meeting, Rebecca Pisaturo-McMillan made a file note, and that's been tendered into evidence in court. We've seen that file note. It was also read into evidence in court. And it says, "Is 4 months pregnant, would like to make enforceable in event anything happens to her, child to be awarded to auntie and 2 cousins, 16 and 17 years. Question as to price, open brackets, father in prison, drug addict, mother unknown." Rebecca also told the court Amber had said to her that the father of her child had threatened her, that he'd previously been in jail for murder. And this is reflected on that file note as well, with the line, "Father of child has been in jail. Murder? Question mark." Ultimately, Rebecca's law firm, Carmody, Crampton Solicitors, drew up that will for Amber, nominating her aunt, Patricia Haigh, as the guardian of her child if she were to die. Rebecca was a witness to Amber signing that will.
And was Rebecca questioned any further about these events?
Under cross-examination, it was put to Rebecca she'd misremembered the allegation that Haigh might be murdered. It was put to her directly, "Amber Haigh never said that to you." And she replied, "I deny that 100%. She categorically did. It has scarred my memory." Rebecca says she passed on Amber's disclosure to a solicitor in her office and defended not reporting it to police. She says, "I didn't take it to law enforcement. I spoke to the legal professionals within the office." Rebecca says she was quite certain she told Ross Crampton, the solicitor for whom she worked, as well as other staff in the office.
And did the court hear from Ross Crampton?
It did. Ross Crampton was the solicitor who ultimately wrote up Amber's will. And he told the court he thought it was unusual for an 18-year-old to be making a will, but he thought it was an action taken out of an abundance of caution. He said Amber said to him she wanted a will in case something happens to me, but that he put no sinister interpretation on that until he saw a news report that Amber was missing, at which point he called the police. But he said Amber made no disclosure to him that Robert Jeeves had told her he would kill her. She didn't, on his evidence, say anything like that to him. And this is something we've seen a number of times in the evidence before the court, something that's been commented on both from the bar table and from the judge. Amber appeared to be more comfortable making disclosures about her alleged situation, about what was happening to her, about her fears for the future, to women rather than to men. We heard that she told a woman she'd only just met at a train station that Robert Jeeves would tie her up and have sex with her. We heard she showed a female cousin the injuries to her wrists she alleged were sustained from being tied up. but she didn't show any male relatives or friends. The Crown prosecutor told the court that Amber only makes these representations to women, and the judge, at a separate point in the trial, commented from the bench on Amber's pattern of telling women about these issues in her life. Defence counsel for Robert Jeeves agreed there did seem to be a pattern of disclosures made to women.
We'll be right back. Later in the week, we also heard from the nurse who conducted Amber's pregnancy test. What did she tell the court?
Katherine Kerr was employed as a women's health nurse at the Young Community Health Centre, and she testified on Tuesday. She's Robert Jeeves' first cousin, though she told the court they were not in regular contact at the time, and as of the time she gave evidence, they hadn't seen each other in years. Katherine first met Amber early in June 2001. Amber was in the early stages of her pregnancy. She gave Amber a pregnancy care book, and she remembered the response she got from Amber, who said that she couldn't take it home because the wife of the father of her child might find it, and that might cause a problem. But Katherine also testified about an alleged incident that happened less than a month after Amber's son was born. This was on the 19th of February in 2002. It was late at night, about 10 p.m, and she heard her dogs barking. She says she woke to find Robert Jeeves at her back door with Amber and his wife, Anne Geeves. And it was Anne Geeves who was holding the baby. Katherine told the court that Amber, who suffered from epilepsy, appeared in a lot of discomfort, and that she said she felt as if she was having a fit. Katherine told the court she sat down very carefully, almost as if she'd only just had the baby. An ambulance was called, and Katherine asked if Amber could lay down on a bed until it arrived. But she told the court Robert didn't want that to happen. In her words, he just wanted to get her back in the vehicle and take her up to the road. Our driveway was about 400 metres long. Katherine said she helped Amber along her veranda and down a few steps to the vehicle because she wasn't moving very freely. It was the Jeeves white two-door Suzuki. And then Katherine said Robert Jeeves helped Amber get into the back of the vehicle, not in the back seat, but in the very back. In her words, where you'd put cargo. There were blankets, and Amber sat very carefully, Katherine said, very gingerly. Katherine said it was a cool evening, and she offered another wrap for the baby, but that was declined, and they drove back up the driveway to the road to meet the ambulance. Amber was admitted to Young Hospital for a few days that evening, and Katherine told the court a message came to the women's health nurses who were asked to provide counselling to Amber about contraception. There was no cross-examination of Katherine Kerr. The court rose to end week 4 of this murder trial, and the last tranche of evidence was drawn from hundreds and hundreds of pages written by caseworkers from the Department of Community Services, known as DOCS. These file notes were written by caseworkers who saw Amber Haigh during the final few months of her life. But importantly, the court's yet to hear from these caseworkers themselves. At this stage, we've heard only from their manager, Jade Wynne. Also this week, we started to hear about the weeks and months after Amber Haigh disappeared in June of 2002. Recall that the Jeeves claim Amber left their young son with them just before she vanished. And afterwards, the court heard that in the Jeeves custody, her son remained. The courts also heard that eventually Amber's son was taken from the Jeeves over pressure from police, not from DOCS. The Crown is expected to call a number of caseworkers and police investigators as prosecution witnesses in the coming weeks of this trial.
That was Guardian Australia reporter Ben Doherty. You can read more of his reporting on the trial at theguardian.com. This episode was also based on reporting by Gabrielle Chan. In Australia, the crisis support service Lifeline is on 13 11 14. The National Family Violence Counselling Service is on 1800 737 732. Information and support for anyone affected by rape or sexual abuse issues is available at 1-800-RESPECT. If you missed our first 2 episodes, you can find a link to every episode in the show notes. This episode was produced by Joe Koning, who also did the sound design. The executive producer is Miles Martignoni. I'm Bridie Jabour, and we'll be back with another episode next Monday.